Is cold email dead or is it alive and thriving? Because
No.
depending on who you ask, you
Yeah.
get a very different answer.
I would definitely say cold email is not dead, and I don't think it's going to be dead for a long, long time. It's gotten, definitely more difficult to be successful, and there are a number of ESPs out there that specialize in cold email for B2B, and their platform is built, to where you have to have multiple domains, multiple, from email accounts because they only want you to send no more than 30 emails a day per address, for example. And so there are several out there that do very good with that. So yeah, it's definitely not dead. However, I will say, we have experienced some data and data providers that it's just not so good. So it all comes down to the data, Kevin. If you've got good, clean data, you're going to be able to mail. But if you've got an old list that you've purchased or rented, it's not so good.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. I also run an agency, Did It, as well as a brand, Truth Nutrition, that I bought partially to run marketing experiments that no sane marketer would ever run, so that I could find out what works and what doesn't. I also run a nonprofit, Giving Forward in the cause marketing category. Super excited to be chatting with John Cross today. John Cross is the CEO of All-in-One Email, which is, in the email space, and people keep saying, email is dead every year for the last 15 years, and every year email becomes, if not more important than ever, certainly equally important. So, what's the elevator pitch? Just so folks know where you're coming from as a subject matter expert, what's the elevator pitch these days for all-in-one email?
Well, our platform basically is a front end to any ESP that can accept an SMTP relay or API relay. So everything is housed within our platform, your list, your data, your reporting, your campaigns, your templates, and then we can parse out based on, where you're getting best delivery at Gmail at one ESP, you're getting good inbox at Yahoo over here. So you can easily mix it up, and that's how we built the platform, was for marketers that want to have flexibility in where they send. They don't want to be tied to one ESP or one domain, because if they get blocked somewhere, they're out of business for a very long time. So it provides a flexibility so you've got options and basically security. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, that's a fascinating conundrum that has sort of bubbled up for folks, which is, depending on which ESP sent the identical email, the deliverability might be different. And to your point, it might be different even just based on the which inbox it's going to.
Exactly.
And figuring that out and figuring out how to optimize sounds like it's not something a person would try to do on their own, and certainly could use a platform to assist in that. But I imagine that there's sort of a sweet spot from a mailing volume perspective where at a certain point, people are sending sufficient volumes of email, either transactional emails or promotional slash marketing emails where, or maybe it's a publisher, right? That where
Mhm.
it sort of starts to make sense to think about, using more than one SMTP relay or more than one API powered channel. Is there like sort of a general sweet spot where people should start thinking about, wait a minute, maybe one ESP is not the way to go here?
Yeah, I mean, for most marketers that join us, they're going to start out with one ESP. Typically, if they're newer, they want to build up that brand reputation. With the ISPs, spreading things out when you're young or new isn't always the best thing, because it does take time to build up reputation of your domain. So, I typically recommend, let's start with one. Let's slowly ramp it up and see how it goes. Then we can measure the results. And if we need to try something different, we can put a segment over here to this other ESP or this other domain and test it out. I'm always into A/B testing and A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down the line, testing all the time. And our platform is built that way, where you can do it with domains, you can do it with subject lines and from names, even your click domains. It's super easy to be able to rotate that through to not only do your A/B split testing, but also for some high volume bulk mailers, maybe in the affiliate space, doing lead gen, they want to spread out their footprint. So they don't want to have all the same content going to a big blast going out to 100,000 records or 1 million even.
Right, right. So I guess it depends, but it seems like the sooner that somebody's in conversations with you, the more that they could tap in with your team and yourself,
Yep.
tap into the expertise that might lead them to know whether it's time to add another delivery channel into the mix.
Right. And you mentioned our team, and that is another service that we provide that most email platforms or email service providers do not. So we have an in-house team of experienced marketers, and so we can do the managed services for our customers, and we do. We can do everything for them, soup to nuts, or we can just provide them some specific consulting, whatever their needs are. And then we've also worked with a lot of companies, just getting them ramped up. We'll do everything for you for the first 90 days, and then we turn it over to you. We train you, and then you're driving after 90 days, and that seems to work out well.
Great, great. I know it must probably within the last year, although of course time flies and I lose track of time. But there have been some changes in the last couple of years, certainly, where having the right DNS settings and sort of to improve deliverability and being able to authenticate that it is
Yep.
in fact an authorized sender from that, for that particular domain name, in fact, sending that email can make a huge difference in non-deliverability or in classification of spam and going into the promotional box potentially in the Gmail environment. So for those folks who don't live and breathe down in the bowels of DKIM and SPF records and such, what's the sort of layperson's description of sort of all those settings and how you make sure they're all set properly?
Well, using a service like us, we'll do it for you. We make sure you're authenticated before you send out one email out the door. And it's super easy. And, a year ago, prior to these big changes at Yahoo and Gmail, there was a lot of fear, a lot of worry. If you were already doing it right beforehand, you had nothing to worry about, and that was like with us. We didn't really have to change anything on the way we send, how we authenticate, anything like that. It's really more of the gray hat, maybe black hat mailers that, are worried, but that's not us. That's not our customers.
Right, right. So I'd love to hear how you and your teams deal differently when either because the mailer's mix of email addresses is different or because of maybe even at the individual mailing level, when you're delivering to a corporate email, which is obviously a corporate email, maybe likely to be hitting a Barracuda type environment versus when you're mailing to sort of the Gmails, Hotmails of the world and Yahoo Mails of the world, and maybe where it's more of a consumer focused mailer. Are there best practices that are different depending on, who you're mailing to corporately or sort of a more personalized inbox?
Yes, absolutely. There are, Kevin. Just in the last year and a half, couple years, the B2B cold outreach has really kind of become very popular. It's mail-in B2B is very different from B2C because of what you mentioned. Most major big corporations, they have pretty secure firewalls and filters and so forth. And as a result of that, we have to mail differently. So we can't just send out a blast of 100,000 records all at once like we can to Gmail. We have to send very slowly over time, only so much per day. And you have to kind of have that cadence and that throttling to be able to like make sure that the mail isn't going out all at once. You want to trickle it out. We have a throttling tool that we use for that, just for that purpose. So it's a very different customer in terms of how you have to mail to.
Are there scenarios where some of the folks that you're mailing for, some of your mailing clients, have multiple email addresses from the same individual in the same record, and you sort of have to decide, okay, it seems like one of these is corporate and one is personal, or like one Gmail and one Yahoo Mail, right? And so they're in the record both with John Smith as the recipient, and sort of you're struggling with this idea of, well, I'll get a better chance of them seeing it if I mail to both. But on the flip side, maybe that if they see both, they'll be more likely to unsubscribe.
Yeah, and in that case, it's not that common, Kevin. We do sometimes get those records, but in most cases, with data providers, they do include primary email, secondary, or business, personal. So it
Mhm.
depends on the content that you're sending. If you're sending a B2B cold outreach, you don't want to be sending to somebody's Yahoo address,
Right.
especially if they've got their business domain available. You want to go there.
So, is cold email dead, or is it alive and thriving? Because
No.
depending on who you ask, you'll
Yeah.
get a very different answer.
I would definitely say cold email is not dead, and I don't think it's going to be dead for a long, long time. It's gotten, definitely more difficult to be successful, and there are a number of ESPs out there that specialize in cold email for B2B, and their platform is built, to where you have to have multiple domains, multiple, from email accounts because they only want you to send no more than 30 emails a day per address, for example. And so there are several out there that do very good with that. So yeah, it's definitely not dead. However, I will say, we have experienced some data and data providers that it's just not so good. So it all comes down to the data, Kevin. If you've got good, clean data, you're going to be able to mail. But if you've got an old list that you've purchased or rented, it's not so good. And so yeah, I mean, there's companies out there that are top tier like Zoom Info. It's not cheap, but we have an account with Zoom Info. We use it for some of our customers and some of our own outreach. So it's the data is pretty good, and companies like Zoom Info have what they call the signal data, where it's basically they can track intent, where people that have been looking for a particular, or like an accounting service or something like that, and then you can get that email in almost real time, and then shoot them off a welcome or a message saying, "Hey, are you looking for an accountant? We're here in LA. We'd be happy to make you a proposal." So it's pretty interesting with this intent data, which is kind of the newest trend that I'm seeing in email. And there hasn't been a lot of new trends in email in a long time.
So I'd love to delve into some sort of common mistakes that perhaps you see folks make that are super easy to fix. I would say probably my biggest pet peeve for email that I receive is not making it mobile friendly, right?
Uh,
Whereas it just doesn't render really well in a mobile device. It's almost like the person sending it only checked it on their whatever their primary email is on the web, and they didn't bother to think about what it looks like. So that's my pet peeve on email is when I receive an email, particularly from a large marketer who should know better, and it renders horribly on my mobile device. That's
yeah.
that's one sort of no-brainer fix. But what are some other things you tend to see when you start with a client where you've seen it over and over again, sort of a
Well, I can tell you
recurring
just from
problem?
experience and receiving a lot of these cold emails, in my inbox and my spam folder. And I guess one of my biggest pet peeves is when they say, they say something like, "We reviewed your website and noticed this," or "We're impressed with your successes in LinkedIn." It's like, come on. I mean, just be honest. I mean, it's like it's so much bull, and
Yeah.
it's just like that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Um, there are companies, however, that do personalization really well, and I think that is a key factor is to be able to personalize your email, and not just like the first name, or hello John or whatever, but if you can kind of build your email to personalize it and create a conversation, and so like it seems like that you've actually done your research. Hopefully you have.
Mhm.
And that's a huge tip. And also it takes a little bit of time, but I see these where they just don't apply to me. And I don't know how they got my name, how they got my number, but why would I ever click on this when I look at your domain and it's not even a real company. Your physical address in the footer isn't a real US address. There's all these different things, these red flags I see, that just basically it's just inauthentic. So I guess my biggest tip is really just be authentic, be truthful, particularly in these cold B2B emails that people are sending out. Just be authentic.
So on the on the publisher side, a lot of publishers obviously have re embraced email because they can use it to bring back consumers to read their publishing content. And in some cases, they're starting to want to do sort of fun dynamic stuff within the email, like dynamically serving content and,
Yep.
sort of, are there any best practices from a creative perspective of sort of, and they're even serving ads. I mean, obviously, there are companies like Live Intent that will dynamically serve ads into email in some readers, right? So,
Yep.
any best practices that you've seen just with regards to, hyper, how dynamic or how hyper personalized to get just where stuff is being pulled in real time to the email as
Yes.
opposed to being hard coded in there,
So Google has a program called AMP, AMP,
right?
and they have a whole section of their website, to basically study, research how to do it, best practices. And we've been doing that for several years and following Google's practice. Yahoo also, I noticed, also has an AMP developer page on their website. So just try not to build your own. Use what the major ISPs are telling you to do, and you'll be successful.
If folks want to be, doing sort of learning, you were talking about A/B testing earlier, right?
Mhm.
But there's so many different things you could be A/B testing, including subject lines and, HTML rich emails versus potentially
Right.
even, boiling it down more simple to just text, and not going HTML rich. So, are there sort of any best practices around that, that you recommend either books or resources or just sort of general best practices around crafting subject lines and how rich to make the content, for example?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, there's guidelines on the amount of images versus text. And there's a lot of discrepancy between, what people believe is okay or not. There's quite a bit of, I guess, like spam testing services, like Mail Tester is one that we really like. It'll give you a good ratio. It'll tell you the ratio of your images to text. It'll pick up spam words. It'll look at all your authentication. And then there's services like, subjectline.com, a free service where you just type in or paste in your email address, and it'll give you its assessment of it, spamminess, and then even provide you with some, better examples of what you're trying to do. There's a lot of free tools out there. Some of them are you do have to pay a monthly fee, but there's a lot of free stuff out there. And the days of the one big image, are over. That was pretty popular in the 90s and the early 2000s. And they look great. I mean, because you can have, your designers, use Photoshop and make these beautiful looking emails, but there's, to the ISP, it just looks like an image. And there's no content there. They have no way to know, is this valid or not? So that's why I actually use very little images, as little as possible, maybe a logo, maybe something else. Now, if you're a retailer, then that's a different story, or doing e-com. But most of the time, you can build beautiful emails with just HTML using tables and colors and making a table, look like a button, where you can click on it and there's no images whatsoever, but it looks really nice.
So yeah, it's sort of like Back to the Future, right? Because I remember it's in the early days of the web when we were on, modems that were measured by baud, right? You wanted to keep things super lightweight, right? And then then obviously everybody started getting, gigabit fiber on their desktop, but at the same time, there are situations where a person's on a mobile device and maybe only has, one bar of 3G connectivity, right? And they're reading their email and their emails, chock loaded with images and doesn't render well, right? So I guess that's another pet peeve that I hadn't thought about because I've sometimes been in situations where it's mobile unfriendly, but in a different way, right? Where it's just sort of way too image heavy.
Exactly. Yeah. Keep it light. I mean, just keep it super simple and you'll be better off.
For folks who are sort of sending combinations of transactional emails and marketing emails, which could include banks or retailers or
Yep.
whatever, obviously they need to think about deliverability a little bit differently for their the order confirmation email
Yep.
versus the Black Friday email, right?
Yeah.
So how do you advise them on sort of how to sort of manage the sending infrastructure as it relates to that? Should they end up just using their e-commerce platform's standard ESP when it comes to all the transactional email and separate out marketing separately, or potentially also, use APIs and use like Amazon's SES when they're doing
Sure.
transactional in certain cases?
Yeah, so when it's really common for major brands to use different mail platforms for different functions, right? And what I recommend, if you need to have that same domain, and you don't always have to, because sometimes I do recommend using a lookalike domain, or a domain with maybe a hyphen in it, that's the same, everything else is the same. But most of the time, brands want to use their brand domain, and that's fair. Um, but there have been many times where marketing and salespeople and IT get into problems because somebody has sent the Black Friday emails to their entire customers, and all of a sudden their transactional emails are getting blocked, right? Well, typically what we do is we have the each of the different units use a different subdomain. So you're not sending from the root domain ever. You really want to send from, orders.maindomain.com and sales.maindomain.com or whatever. So it helps you separate, it helps you mitigate, the types of problems you could have with the bulk mail versus your transactional.
What about when you get a call from a marketer or a referral into a marketer and they've got a major deliverability problem at the moment, right? And so, how easy or difficult is it typically to sort of rescue that situation? We often end up in a similar question around SEO when somebody gets hit by the wrong algo update, for the Did It SEO
Yeah.
team. They're like, is this recoverable? Or, do I just sort of wash my hands and walk away from this or just deal with it, right? And so, if somebody's got really challenging deliverability or just ending up in the wrong tab in Gmail,
Right.
like
Yeah.
how easy is it to sort of improve that situation?
It, well, Kevin, it really depends. I mean, some of these problems that are brought to us just aren't fixable, and we have to like tell the client, I think you need to start over. We just need to wipe this domain out and start it from scratch, and that's unfortunate. But it does take time to dig and really find out what the root cause may be. And sometimes we may never know.
Mhm.
But it's starting over, testing, doing different things. And there are also providers out there that provide, they're like a warming service that have bots that you can send to, and they will open your email, they will scroll through it, they will move it from junk folder to inbox, primary inbox, or whatever. Click on it. That is a strategy or a way to help regain your reputation back. And a lot of new marketers are using these warming services to build up their reputation much quicker than they normally would.
Right, right. Well, no podcast would be complete without a conversation about AI. And certainly AI has sort of become a way that a lot of folks are creating content, but they're also using it to refine content or potentially to, rephrase things or essentially let the AI take the first crack at A/B testing, just given the corpus of knowledge that the AI has and eliminating the real losers from the five subject lines that you thought were going to be good
Yeah.
before you even get out there and test them. So, where are some areas where you're sort of excited to see where AI plays a role within the email marketing environment?
So this is really timely, Kevin, because we're in the process of building out AI infrastructure in a couple ways. One, in reporting, and so the system is going to learn about when is the best time to send, and then the combination, the subject line and the from name combination. We're integrating this into our automated workflows or our drip campaigns. So that based on the billions of emails that we've sent over the years, we've got all this data that the AI servers can look at, and then we can build or it will build the automation flow based on the best time, the best subject line, the best creative, the best copy to send out. So it's pretty exciting. And there's a lot of ESPs out there that are integrating AI in a bunch of different ways. And there's really some very simple ways that people can do it right now. Like, for example, spin texting. It's not really AI, but it's kind of. Are you familiar with
Yeah.
that? How? Yeah, yeah. I mean, so you can. It's just another way to rotate through a bunch of different phrases or ways of saying things, and then our system will then pick up the best combination of all those and basically pick the winner and then send out the winning combination.
Often the folks in charge of email within a brand or a publisher or a nonprofit are also managing um, other forms of push notifications as well. So they might be managing SMS for people who've opted in at that point. They may be managing push notifications for browser-based push. They may be even managing app-centric push notifications. So are there things that you learn via email that can sometimes apply to those other forms of push notifications? Obviously, the permission relationship is very different in the case of those others, and you sort of have to have typically a much more robust permission relationship in those other platforms. But are there some commonalities or some differences that people should think about when they're thinking about other forms of push?
Yeah, I mean, SMS comes to mind for us because, again, for one of our 2025 ventures is integrating SMS into that automated workflow. So you'll have these, if-then type situations where if you send them an email and they don't open it within 24 hours or 48 hours, then you can have the system, send a text message. And so email and SMS are kind of made for each other.
Mhm.
But you're right, you have to have that relationship already, that permission. Um, and you didn't mention phone calls, but with the upcoming changes, with the auto dialers and everything, email and SMS are going to be more and more important to marketers.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my ventures is an AI-powered voicemail platform, but we don't allow in that platform ringless voicemail because we believe that the FCC is frowned upon that, and there's already some evidence to that case. And we, to be honest, just want to make salespeople more efficient, more effective, not allow everybody to become an inbox spammer.
Exactly.
But yeah, voice is not dead for sure. Neither is direct mail, I guess, which is another form
No,
of push notification
it's huge right
that
now.
that people use. So I guess the common theme across all of these things is testing right against different segments and making sure you got the right message to the right person at the right time with the right platform, right? And thinking about
Exactly.
the choreography of the messaging across channel, right? So you could potentially, reference a direct mail piece in your voicemail message and then reference that voicemail message in your email follow up or whatever, and really think about, treating the person as they would expect to be treated.
Exactly. Yeah. And this and the CRM, most of the CRM platforms have all that integration already. And it's super helpful for the marketer to be able to know that information, to be able to report on it, and they get a better return as a result.
So, what else should we have discussed about the current state of email marketing that we didn't talk about so far?
Um, you said right off the bat, is email dead? You were talking about cold email, but email in general is not dead, and it's not going to be dead for a very long time. I'm thinking about maybe writing a book. Email's not dead. And like I said, with the auto dialer rules, coming around the corner, I think email is just more and more important than it's ever been. And you mentioned direct mail. Direct mail is huge right now. It was on a dying dying trajectory for many years, but because of this, these auto dialer companies, they're going to be out of business, or they're going to have to change the way they do business. And so many companies are getting into the direct mail space, and they're doing quite well these days.
Yeah, I mean, it was towards the end of the pandemic when I had my direct mail team prototype something that we ended up building, which was putting custom QR codes on every piece of mail by recipient.
Ooh,
So
nice.
when the recipient is excited about the offer and scans it, it pings the CRM and flags that as a Glengarry lead right out of the gate, right? Regardless of what the person does with the landing page, if they abandon it or not, because it's still an important signal that they thought enough of the offer to scan the QR code. We did, of course, tell the sales teams, don't say we noticed you scanned your QR code at 360 yesterday. But the point is the fact that they scan it enriches the data and then allows the marketer to do something else, right, as a result of that. So, yeah, I think we mail about 36 million pieces of direct mail a year, most
Oh,
of which
wow.
have these QR codes on them. And that was a business I didn't anticipate that it would be in. But adding a technology layer to something old and making it new is sometimes a fun challenge.
Yeah, that's a great story. Like that.
Well, I look forward to keeping up, and thanks so much for sharing the
Yes.
best practices with myself and the viewers and listeners. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate you for reaching out.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.